So for this drawing art one, or this video, I should say, I'm not going to talk very much. I'm simply going to take my basic outline version of my crab apple, and I'm going to go ahead and work on step 2, which, as I mentioned at the end of the last video, is simply adding more detail to my outline, double checking everything, making sure that I have things in the right spot, and then starting to add some of those internal details. You very well may spend one entire class period just nailing down a really detailed, clear, concise outline. And that's perfectly fine. So make sure that you are allowing yourself the time to do each and every single one of these steps thoroughly. This next video will probably not even encompass the entire second step, but I will try to show you enough of the second step and the corrections that I am making to help you out with your projects. And one other thing that you will notice is that I am not going to erase a lot on this step, simply because I want to make my corrections before I erase my mistakes so that I don't run the risk of just repeating the exact same mistake. So you'll see that I try to get everything accurate before I erase and add details. So now at this point, sorry if I startled you there, but at this point I have my drawing pretty corrected. Not much of the interior detail yet, but the next thing that I would do would be to go ahead and erase some of those lines from where I made corrections so that I can start to clean up that outline again to make it more or less one sort of line. Because eventually we will be using colored pencil on these, and you are not going to want a lot of extra sort of line finding marks, if that makes sense. Because a lot of your initial outline is what we would call a gesture, which simply means that it's helping you find the exact line that you're looking for. So right now I'm just going to go through, continue erasing where I have made changes, making sure that I am looking at the computer to verify that the parts I am erasing are actually the ones I mean to erase and not the ones I mean to keep. Now, some of you may do this particular process, this erase and redraw more than once. And that is perfectly fine. If you are one of those people who needs to do that 2, maybe even 3 times, go for it. Do not ever feel like just because I do something a certain way means it's the only way to do it. Just because I'm going to make my corrections and then go ahead and start adding interior detail does not mean that you cannot do more than one correction step. If you need more than one correction step, or if you feel better with more than one, that's absolutely acceptable. The biggest change I had was this side of the apple, because I noticed that I had it going out a little bit too far at first. So I had to make it a little less wide. And I also had to space this pincer from this pincer a little bit more by sort of making this one that I'm currently erasing more narrow, because I had initially drawn it too wide. And so there was not enough space between this big pincer and the little one above it. But now it feels and looks more accurate. So I'm just going to continue erasing those last couple of lines before I begin my next step. So you can see I added some more detail to the outline of this particular pincer. Not much of the interior yet, primarily just focused on that outline. So then this next step, once I have erased and I've gotten everything sort of a little bit more concise, my next step is to go back through the whole drawing again and add a little bit more specific detail, especially in terms of sort of the knuckles, I guess you could say, of the pincers, and maybe some of the speckles and shadows and highlights on the apple, some of the veins on the leaf, and some more of the details on the stem. I'm not erasing my grid until I have every single detail that I want to have on my drawing done. Erasing the grid is the last thing you'll do before a final check and then color. And we will continue talking through the whole process as we get to that point. But your next video is simply going to be an example of me just adding more interior detail to my crab apple before I even think about erasing the grid.